World War II was the largest armed conflict in history. The war had caused about 50 million civilian and military deaths, and approximately 67% of Jews in Europe had been murdered in the final solution. Yet, for the first 2 years of the war, the United States found a way of staying neutral until the declaration of war on Japan on December 8, 1941. A continuing issue has evolved among citizens in the United States: whether or not the reason to enter any war is justifiable. Most citizens showed their opinions about the wars their country was fighting through protests and riots, but one war was different. World War II was easily justified by the government and by the citizens. But in order for a war to be justified, it must satisfy 6 principles. The first principle for a war to be just is that the war must have a justifiable cause. At 7:48 a.m. on December 7, 1941, the Empire of Japan surprised the United States by bombing Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, a U.S. naval base and the headquarters of the United States Pacific Fleet. 2,403 Americans were killed, and 1,178 were wounded during what Japan called a preventive action to keep the United States Pacific Fleet from interfering in Japan's military actions in Southeast Asia. The United States had preserved their declaration of neutrality until December 8, 1941. At 4:10 p.m., Congress passed their declaration of war on the Empire of Japan, officially entering the United States into the Pacific and European theaters. The United States had an easily justifiable cause to enter the war: to prevent more attacks on American soil, and to avenge the losses that occurred during the unexpected attack on Pearl Harbor. The second principle for war to be just is that the war must be lawfully declared. On December 8th at 12:30 p.m., President Roosevelt requested a declaration of war, and Congress met to vote. The declaration quickly passed the Senate, with a vote of 82-0 and 388 votes to 1 in the House of Representatives. At 4:10 p.m., Roosevelt signed the declaration with full Congress and citizen approval, and the United States officially entered World War II. The third principle for a war to be just is that the war must be entered to save the peace. The United States entered World War II due to the unexpected bombing of Pearl Harbor. The U.S. had been successfully neutral, only supplying arms to France and Britain before the attack on Pearl Harbor that drew the U.S. into World War II. In response to the attack, the U.S. entered the war to prevent more attacks on their soil, and the potential deaths of many citizens. The fourth principle for war to be just is that the war must be the last resort. World War II started on September 1, 1939, when Great Britain and France declared war on Germany after Germany invaded Poland. The United States remained neutral until March of 1941, when the arms embargo was repealed so arms could be sold to Great Britain and France. Other than selling arms, the United States stayed neutral until the attack on Pearl Harbor. The United States only entered the war until their soil was attacked. The fifth principle for a war to be just is that the country entering the war must have a reasonable chance of success. In 1939, the Manhattan Project modestly began, but gained government recognition in 1942. The Manhattan Project was a research program developing atomic bombs. Researchers knew they were close to discovering the atomic bomb, which would give the United States a severe advantage over their opponents. August 6, 1945, the United States dropped Little Boy, a uranium atomic bomb, on Hiroshima, Japan. At most, 166,000 people died, half on the first day and the other half months after, due to burns and radiation. On August 9th, 3 days after Hiroshima, the United States dropped Fat Man, a plutonium atomic bomb, on the city of Nagasaki. At most, 80,000 people died, many dying from wounds months later. On August 15th, just a week after the bombings, Japan announced its surrender to the Allies. On September 2nd, Japan officials signed the Instrument of Surrender, officially ending World War II and propelling the Allies into victory. The sixth principle and final reason for war to be just is that the war must prevent more suffering than it causes. By entering the war, the United States prevented the death of many U.S. citizens from attacks that probably would have happened. And the U.S. also inadvertently helped save many European Jews from being annihilated by Hitler and his Nazi regime. Up to 90% of Jews in European countries such as Poland had been murdered through Hitler's racial cleansing. When the Allies won World War II, many concentration camps were liberated, and the murdering of many people came to a stop. The United States' entrance into World War II was, and still is, undeniably justifiable. Although World War II was brutal for many countries and many people, the war launched the United States into one of the best militarized countries on the globe.